Hi, everyone, and welcome to F-Bomb Friday. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my husband, Todd. Hey, hon.
Hey, baby.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Let's hit it. The story of Paul Bunyan is a North American folktale about a giant lumberjack and his big blue ox named Babe. The stories originated in the oral tradition of North American loggers. Most likely, the legend of Paul Bunyan began as campfire tales told for entertainment in the 19th century logging communities. The telling of tall tales was a significant part of American entertainment in the time of logging and the expansion westward. Paul Bunyan is a well-known American legendary figure. He essentially is the biggest, strongest man who ever worked as a lumberjack. For those of you who don't know, lumberjacks were the men who cut down trees and moved them from forests to places where the raw logs would be made into a product that could be used for building. Working in a logging camp as a lumberjack was physically demanding and very dangerous work. So, stories about a powerful man who was so strong he could do great physical tasks without effort, and danger was something the lumberjacks would have enjoyed at the end of a long day's work. This is a great time of growth for America. There was a great desire to build new cities and to settle the country in its entirety. The stories of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox is considered folklore, and their origins are not fully known. However, many states and Canada claim to have ties with Paul and Babe. The city of Bangor, Maine claims to be Bunyan's birthplace. The city clerk's office has a framed birth certificate for Bunyan, who was born on February 18, 1834. Bemidji, Minnesota also claims to be the birthplace of Bunyan and Babe. Westward, California claims to be Bunyan's hometown after he worked for the Red River Lumber Company. Some say Bunyan was based on Canadian lumberjacks, including Bunyan, a soldier in the Papineau Rebellion of 1837. Some claim Bunyan was based on Fabien Fournier, a French-Canadian lumberjack who worked in Michigan after the Civil War. The stories that were told about Paul Bunyan and Babe were exaggerated each time to outdo the other story that was told. The stories became popular after William B. Lafayette used them in a 1916 advertisement for the Red River Lumber Company. Bunyan was said to be a giant, standing 7 feet tall, or taller, with a 7-foot stride. A big bearded man, wearing red flannel and work boots and wielding a massive axe. It is said that Paul Bunyan was a kind, caring, friendly, nice, and helpful man. But don't ever make the mistake of insulting him or bragging to him. According to legend, Paul Bunyan found his companion Babe the Blue Ox as a tiny, frozen blue calf in a snowbank during a harsh winter where the snow turned him blue. He took the calf home, warmed it up, and the calf stayed blue. Bunyan named the blue ox Babe. The two became fast friends, and Babe became his loyal helper in his logging work, growing to an enormous size alongside Paul himself. Because of the pair's gigantic size, they could perform incredible feats, such as clearing forests and creating lakes. Here are just a few of the amazing achievements accomplished, according to legend, from this dynamic duo. Bunyan and Babe created the 10,000 lakes of Minnesota with their footsteps. By dragging his large axe across the ground, Paul Bunyan carved out the Grand Canyon, the result of a leaking water tank pulled on a sled by Babe created the Mississippi River. Paul is often depicted as being able to fell entire forests with a single swing of his axe. Some stories attribute the formation of the St. Lawrence River and the Bay of Fundy to Paul and Babe. It is said that Mount Hood was created from the stones of their campfire. Other stories say that Paul Bunyan is strong enough to shatter the entire Rocky Mountain range. Other lore suggests that Bunyan might be able to control the earth or ice, and he can also control the size of animals. Paul's voice was so loud that he could call his crew to dinner by blowing through a hollow tree. One story claims that Paul sneezed so hard, it blew all the birds from Maine all the way to California. The Ojibwe people adapted the story of Paul Bunyan where he really wasn't quite the, quote, good guy. In this story, Paul Bunyan came to log the forest of northern Minnesota. Nanabozo, a culture hero of the Ojibwe, fights Paul Bunyan to protect the forest. The two fought for 3 days. Nanabozo eventually slaps Paul with a giant walleye, which is a fish. Bunyan was knocked on his butt in the mud, forming Red Lake, Minnesota. The story of Paul and his big blue bovine friend Babe is well known throughout the country. But why does Michigan tend to lay claim to the legend? Indeed, there are several monuments depicting Bunyan and his sizable companion found across the state. A hand-carved statue of Paul Bunyan is battled over every fall between college football rivals Michigan and Michigan State. Well, I say go green. But what's the deal? The origins of Paul Bunyan's story formed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. During that time, Michigan had one of the most prominent logging industries in the country, and because of that, the legend of Paul Bunyan became woven into the state's history just by the sheer number of lumberjacks who were around to spread the tall tales within the logging camps. Folklore says that the larger-than-life pair are responsible for creating Michigan's landscape through their adventures and mishaps. There are stories that the Upper Peninsula is shaped in the likeliness of Babe, the blue ox. It is said that Lake Huron was created by Paul Bunyan's footprint. It also suggests that all the Great Lakes were dug out by Paul so that Babe would have large enough watering holes to drink from. In 1906, journalist James McGilvery published the first Paul Bunyan story, Round River, in the Escoda Press based on the stories of lumberjacks. This event led to Michigan designating Escoda as the birthplace of Paul Bunyan in 2006. There are at least 8 Paul Bunyan statues in the state of Michigan, in Manistee, there is a large statue of Paul wearing a red cap, denim, and a checkered shirt. A 16-foot tall statue of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox stand guard at Castle Rock in St. Ignace. My dad took us there when I was a little girl, and I took Emmy there a couple years ago.
Yeah, I love seeing that. I love seeing them up there.
Yeah, it's fun. There's also a roadside statue of Paul and Babe in Osinki, Michigan. I hope I said that right. In Alpena, there's a statue of Paul Bunyan that is made from auto parts and is the lumberjack mascot for the Alpena Community College. A fiberglass statue of Paul stands in front of Knutson's Sporting Goods in Jackson. There is a 13-foot statue of Paul Bunyan in Escoda. West Branch also has a statue of Paul Bunyan. Now, there is no doubt that Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox are beloved legendary characters in Michigan and across the nation, and here's why. The morals of the Paul Bunyan stories are often interpreted as celebrating the value of hard work, perseverance, and using one's strength to overcome challenges and contribute positivity to the community, often through themes of teamwork and resourcefulness when facing the vastness of the wilderness, essentially using your abilities to help others and shape the world around you. Paul's immense size and strength represent the ability to overcome obstacles and push through difficult situations. The stories often highlight Paul working with a team of lumberjacks, signifying the importance of collaboration and cooperation. Basically, to use the gifts you have been given to do the thoughtful things to show care for others in society in general. And with that, I say cheers to Paul Bunyan and Babe, the Big Blue Ox. Now, hon, wasn't there, I don't know if you ever heard this story, but I clearly remember being told that Paul Bunyan fell backwards and his hand, the way it landed, is what formed the Lower Peninsula. Did you ever hear that?
I didn't hear that, but that's a possibility. There's so many different stories, so many different variations. As was said, the lumberjacks would tell the story of Paul Bunyan, and each time they told it, it got more and more exaggerated because they had to tell a better story than their buddy did last week.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, that's, isn't that like way back in the day? I don't know if vagabond is the right word, but people would travel on foot and they would find a farm, and for room and board, they would do work and whatnot. And then at night, they would tell campfire stories. And with each home that they told the story in, they had to keep improving that story.
Right.
So it just get embellished more and more and more.
Right. And it kind of brings the nickname Tall Tale, true to form, especially with Paul Bunyan.
Right.
I remember as a child in elementary school, I think it was the first time I saw it, was the Disney movie of Paul Bunyan, which I watched the other night, and I loved it. And there's so much sing-song in it, too. Every time there was a little part of the story, and they cut to in between the stories, they'd do a little ditty, and it was catchy.
I think I remembered that one. Isn't that where they show him, like, whacking his way through the mountain range?
Yes, and with the swing of an axe, he would take out thousands of trees.
I wonder how Paul Bunyan died.
Well, I didn't put this in the story, but there is a place, I believe it's in Maine, where they actually put a monument in a cemetery for Paul Bunyan.
Really?
Yes.
Well, he's ours, damn it.
Right. All the states are fighting for Paul Bunyan. Everybody wants Paul Bunyan.
And nobody really wants a Bunyan. Those hurt.
Yeah, I did find on my search, I didn't dive into it, but a question was asked, did Paul Bunyan have bunions? It's a great question. I don't know the answer because that wasn't the question I was looking for.
Right. You're like, who cares? Moving on.
Now, there's been a lot of stories, some books, lots of songs, lots of legends about Paul Bunyan. As I mentioned, the Disney movie from 1958. Wow, that seems like a really long time. There's also a movie that came out in 2013. And for our horror movie fans, you might dig this movie. I wasn't a huge fan of the movie. I did watch it, and for the sake of research, I watched the whole thing. There are some ties to the stories and legends, but mainly it's a scary movie. And one of the good takeaways about that movie was the guy that played Grizzly Adams. He was in it briefly. And also Martin Sheen's brother, who also was an actor. I didn't know that. Almost looks identical to Martin Sheen and sounds just like him. He plays a small role in the movie as well.
I don't want to think of Grizzly Adams as a bad person.
Yeah, I mean, when you first start watching the movie, you don't know that his character is bad, but I'm not going to give away the story in case anybody wants to watch the movie. But, yeah.
Well, you'll have to send it to me. I will watch it.
Okay. I don't know if you'll be happy with the results. You kind of felt like time just slipped away from me. It's called X Giant, The Wrath of Paul Bunyan.
Huh. All right.
Yes.
I'm going to do it for research sake, just like you did.
Just like I did. Yes. And grab your popcorn.
Okay.
But Paul Bunyan's a cool dude, right? Who doesn't love Paul Bunyan? Except for the Native Americans. They were kind of mad because the story involves Paul Bunyan taking out all the trees. But
Well, that's funny because Nana Bojo was also in the story that I kicked off for the Robesons with the crooked tree up near Goodhart. Yeah.
So I'm going to have to assume that Nana Bojo was a pretty big dude himself then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to go toe-to-toe with Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, and for, Nana Bojo, he's like, yo, guess what? Whack! I'm going to hit you with a fish.
How about getting bitch slapped with a walleye?
I don't think I like that. Nana Bojo was a bitch slapper with a walleye.
He's like, you know what? The fists aren't working. I got to think of something else. Hey, there's a fish.
Let me reach down in this big old lake.
It's a little insult to injury right there.
Yeah. You don't even deserve the back of my hand. I'm hitting you with a fish.
You put a little stink on it.
Oh, and a little slime. Take the stinky slime, you big man. Lesson learned. Don't mess with Nana Bojo.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great story, hon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I can still see myself and my sister posing with Paul Bunyan and the big blue ox. I know I got that photo somewhere. Now I'm going to have to dig it out. I think I have a bowl haircut. I'm not happy about that.
I think that's the only Paul Bunyan statue I've seen in person is the one of him and Babe up in St. Ignace.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember seeing that ever since I was a kid. Every time I go up there as an adult, I always look for it. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's one of those really cool childhood memories because they're huge.
They are huge, yeah.
And they're still looking good, so they're maintaining them pretty well. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great job, babe.
Well, thank you. And I love you.
And I love you. You want to sign us out, hon?
I do. You better lock your doors. You better lock your windows. And you might want to check under your bed.
And believe you me, you're not going to find Paul Bunyan and Babe the Big Blue Ox under there.
They're too big.
They're too big. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. And we will see you again on Malice Monday.
See you on Monday.